Okay, so I'm going to share my screen whilst the rest of you type your check-in word. Okay. Oh, Marisa. Right. Okay, so I've got something to show you. As I'm showing you, I want to see if you can figure out what it is. Okay, so I'm going to show you quickly. Anybody got it yet?
Abundance.
Abundance.
Yes. Woo! Okay, and what is abundance, everyone? Why is it so special to us?
It's our word for 2020.
Ooh, 2020?
Oh, gosh, sorry, guys. 2022.
Amy, are you
backwards?
don't take us to 2020, Amy. Let's move forward, okay? Divine. Okay, so this is our word, everyone. Our word for 2022. So I don't know if you all remember, but last year's word was, I've just forgotten what last year's word was. Movement. Oh, my word. So last year's word was movement, remember? That we just keep moving, one step at a time, one day at a time. And 2020's word was obsessed, where we were made the commitment to become obsessed about our learning, obsessed about our businesses, obsessed about our health, really. So obsessed in a very positive way. And this year, we have the most magnificent word that we're all attracting into our lives. And it's not only abundance financially, it's abundance in health, it's abundance in life, abundance in friendships, abundance of beautiful food and great experiences. Okay, yes, Nungo says abundance is what we strive for. 100% correct. Okay, so right now we're about to listen to, I call him a genius in our industry. He calls himself a business advisor, as you can see. And I've heard, his name is Andrew Gibson. Andrew's going to tell you a little bit more about his history and where he's come from. But the bottom line of what I can say to you is that if there's ever been somebody who has been a part of pioneering in our industry, pioneering change, pioneering, he's just told me about a wellness island that I'm hoping he's going to tell you about. So just the things that Andrew gets involved in, the amount of knowledge and skills and ideas that he imparts. In fact, he is one of those speakers that I absolutely never get tired of listening to. So, I mean, Andrew, you could speak for days and I'd just be intrigued and dote on every single word that you have to say. So he'll tell you a little bit about where he's worked, but there's huge, big names involved with some amazing companies. And he's going to chat to us today. So I just want to tell you all, we're very lucky because Andrew has given up 2 precious hours of his time this year for us. Today's session is going to be about data collection, and then he's going to chat to us next month on another amazing topic, but we're not going to tell you about that today. Okay, so Andrew, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can start sharing your amazing presentation.
Well, before I do, I'd just like to say hello, everybody. Great for joining, and love some of the words there, putting me under no pressure. Getting excited over data is pretty weird stuff, I suppose. And it's more to do with what to do with data. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a presentation, but then afterwards, I really want to engage in some chat and some questions if you feel up to it. So let's just try this and see where we go. Now you should have a nice slide of a beautiful picture of me. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Well, I've had about 35 years in the industry. And I've been very fortunate to be around at the time of starting some of the great brands and being parts of the teams that have created some iconic brands. Perhaps you've heard of one or two of them, such as Six Senses and Mandarin Oriental, Raffles, the Fairmont Hotels, and so on. Along that ride and along that journey, I've also contributed quite a lot to the industry and tried to help out in whichever country I happen to be living in at the time. So it could be the China Spa Association and bringing international brands into China for 7 years, or it was the Asia Spa and Pacific Wellness Coalition, or the Thai Spa Association, lecturing at Singapore University, one of the founders and creators of the Global Wellness Summit, which is now probably the biggest body in the world in research, and also a founder and chairman of the Wellness Tourism Association, which is a new body that's gathering pace. Over the last 3 or 4 years, you can go to a company called sensei.com, SENSEI.com. That was the last project I was working on. And in that, it was a startup to create a brand of wellness for one of the top 10 richest people in the world. He's currently 5th richest in the world at the moment. He also owns all of your databases in Oracle and in Microsoft Micros. So he owns most of the hotel systems that operate around the world. But he bought one of the islands in Hawaii, and in buying that island, he simply wanted somebody to create that island into a wellness retreat and also provide wellness for the 3,000 residents that were living on there. So it's pretty exciting. I won't go too much into it. You can look at it, sensei.com. That will give you a much better picture of it. And if you want more details on me, you can look at my LinkedIn profile. I would much rather talk about the presentation today than about me. So, data. I'm going to make this extremely easy for you. There's only 2 points in this presentation you really need to know. And those are the 2 points that I want to get across today. But data is absolutely vital. We're in an age of data collection, whether you like that or not. If you're on Facebook, if you contribute to Amazon or Google, every one of them is collecting data about you and has incredible analytics to actually research and make sure that they know everything they can about you, because they're going to sell that information to somebody else. And what do? If you want to find any information at all, you immediately pick up your handheld and Google it, or whatever search engine you want to go to. That's what you do. So it's very, very important that we collect the right kind of data. In the hotel business, they kind of do this already. They have a company called Smith Travel Research, STR there, that collects the data for all of the hotels around the world and compiles it so that it's actually independently collected and is actually used to sell back to the hotels so that they have information on their competition, information on the average daily rates, length of stay, all of that kind of information that enables them to, 1, benchmark themselves, and 2, be able to provide a strategy to enable them to get to wherever they want to get. For example, Mandarin Oriental, the brief from the CEO is very easy. Every hotel has to have the top RevPAR for the city that they're in. As simple as that. How do they get that RevPAR? They know theirs, but they go to STR to get the information. Similarly, Focusrite is probably the biggest travel information today, and they provide that. And Leading Quality Assurance, LQA, they provide audits and data on your standards. How well do you deliver the service? And of course, in spas, we also have our own software that is giving you the kind of data that you need to know. But I would actually contest that that is poor. Yeah, you capture all the KPIs and you participate in the guest section surveys. I'm sure you all do that in some way or another, but it's relatively poor compared to the hotels. And what do you normally collect? Well, if you've got a software system that I mentioned, you probably collect your data and you've got it like this. and this is a typical example, and they're highlighted in yellow, are the kind of figures that you're going to collect: average treatment rates, utilization rates, treatments booked by hotel guests, not by guests, the capture rate, and so on and so forth. And when do you get that information? At the end of the month. You run a monthly report. Why? Because you have to, because you need to submit it to your financial controller or to your boss. And what do? They look at it and say, oh, you're below budget, or you're above budget, great. Or they look at it and say, yeah, we're underperforming. Why are you underperforming? That's really all it is. It's an ego boost. That's all this is. It's actually pretty irrelevant to you, apart from being able to plan for next year's budget. Typically, everything you get is historical data. And it doesn't give you the ability to change the past, because it is the past, it's happened. And if you're in the case like I was with most of my hotels, you often had to wait until the 15th of the following month to get the data for the previous month. What can I do from that, apart from present nice graphs like this and show it to the financial controller and people like this, and hopefully they'll be happy with what you show. More often than not, they use it as an information for you to cut. That I found very frustrating, really, really annoying. And for me, particularly in my last corporate job, I was looking after over 300 operations. Those operations had different softwares, different owners, different currencies, different brands even. And I wanted a system that was global. In fact, highlighted in red is what I wanted. I wanted to go to my laptop, click on my computer, have a map of the world highlighted with all the different spas I looked after, and then I could just hover over those spas. It'll give me my top key KPIs. And if I clicked on it, it would give me all the analytic information there. So I did this. I built this with a fantastic guy, actually, that was able to build this for me. I managed to get around all the ownership issues and all of the software issues by creating a cloud-based system. And I knew that all of my operations would have to enter their figures and close the books at the end of the day. So if they're closing their books at the end of the day, I gave them a page on this website to be able to input their results into that page, and it was completely confidential. But what it gave me the opportunity to do was to have almost real-time data, not quite real-time data, it was within 24 hours at the end of every day, but it gave me real-time data. That was brilliant, because now with my analytics team in my corporate office, I was able to go back to the spa and say, hey, you know what you could do with another therapist? Here's the figures. Go to your financial controller, show them this data, and say, we need another therapist for the next 10 days if we're going to hit budget and because the demand is there. Or it could be retail. Like I say, hey, you're behind retail. We've got 10 more days till the end of the month. And you're running low on one stock, but you've got a high product of this other stock. So let's do a promotional push of that other product for the 10 days. And hey, you know what? We'll make budget. So that's what we were able to do with this. And it's very, very important. Point one of my 2 points is find systems that will give your data as live as you possibly can, because that enables you to be able to make a switch quickly and keep on top of your financials. And in actual fact, there is a company that I'd like to actually promote. This is the only promotion of any company I'm going to do. I don't normally like to do this. But that same company that built that Accor platform for me have now decided to go global with an extremely affordable, it'll cost you, even in South Africa, it'll cost you less than one treatment a month to buy this system. And this will give you all your KPIs on your mobile phone, on your iPad, to your manager, wherever you decide you want it to go, and it will give them in live time. And that gives you the opportunity to WhatsApp your boss and say, hey, I need another therapist. It also is built in a booking system. So it also enables your guests to see availability and book in. Now, I know all of you have systems for doing that, so that's not particularly exciting, but this one is amazing. It's a very cheap, effective way of getting data directly and straight away, and then giving you a fighting chance of adjusting your figures and adjusting your business to make sure you're hitting targets, rather than just performing nice graphs that show the boss what you have done and not what you're going to do. So that's clear. Point one, get all of your data as live as you possibly can. Okay? So now we'll move on to point two. What are you using that data for? You've collected the data and we've looked at the financial data there. Now, are you doing it to satisfy your bean counter boss who's just checking your financials? Or what about the confusion you're sowing by just showing lots and lots of figures there? There isn't actually much comparable figures. When you've got your figures and you look at your average cost per therapist or your average treatment price, who are you comparing that average against? You know, there are companies out there, I suppose, like Intelligent Spas, which some of you may be familiar with, or the Global Wellness. But in actual fact, there's very, very few that will actually give you the information you need to say whether your average figures are actually good compared to the rest of the people that are in your location, your competition. In 2007, I was at Mandarin Oriental at the time, I combined with the boss of Fairmont to try and get those kind of figures into a meaningful way. Earlier, I mentioned that Smith Travel Research do all the data for the hotels. The hotels contribute that, they compile it, and then they reproduced it anonymously. So theoretically, you don't know who is your competitors to us, but you've got a good idea. And I asked them to try and do that with spas. And we did manage to get going. We've got about 49 participants in the USA that all were prepared to submit information and get that going. And it lasted about 2 years, unfortunately. Why? Well, there was a trust element. People didn't really trust that it was secure and safe information they were giving. Then there was an agreement on definitions. So what exactly is capture rate? We all kind of know what it is, but do you include complementaries? Don't you include complementaries? What about the rebates and all of those kind of things that added to the confusion? And lastly, you needed a critical mass of participants to make sure it was confidential, which came back to the trust element. So it didn't last very long. I tried again in Hong Kong in 2011. I contacted every single spa in Hong Kong. Not a single one was interested. So I would perhaps suggest that it may be possible for the South African Spa Association, or whatever spa association you're in, to just lobby and see whether the members would be interested in submitting their information to an independent, such as the association, so that they could compile the data and be able to produce it for you. Because it is important that your bean counter there doesn't compare your average price against the average price of London, which would be meaningless, or even the average price of something in a city next to you that also would be equally meaningless. It's only worthwhile if you're comparing it against a competitive set that is directly a competitive set to you. So I think there is different types of objectives that you want to achieve, and I believe in presenting them simply. So I wanted once to try and demonstrate to my bosses the difference between the revenue streams within a city and a resort, because they were saying, yeah, the resorts are very, very important. City hotels, not really important with spas. So we said, okay, let's collect some data. And we collected the average spend per category for London and Thailand, a resort in Thailand and London. They were the only two I had available at the time. So I collected that. But what's important here is how do you present that information in a way that makes them look And all of you, you don't need to see the figures even there. You know that if you've got a spa, you're going to get greater spend than if you've not got a spa. And that works in the resort and it works in the city. Simple graph. Instantly, within a minute, you can see the difference. Then you can analyze the figures. Average spend per room night. Well, that's a pretty simple graph, but it demonstrates very easily the point I'm trying to make. That if you are in a city, it is equally important that they have a spa as it is in a resort. Average length of stay, same thing. In fact, perhaps the average length of stay in the city is even more important if you can increase it by a day, because most of the city business may only be weekend business. And of course, the average spend. Now, where did I get this information from? And this is something that I want you to think about very carefully for yourselves. This information came from the sales and marketing department in the hotel. They have that information. They collect the information that you need to be able to do your analytics. You just need to know which questions to ask and what reports to run. And this is the kind of information we were able to extract in another example. So here you can see that I can get the average daily rate of the non-spa guest against the spa guest. I can get the average length of stay. I get the food and beverage spend, the total spend, and the percentages. And I've got it in the figures here as well. All of this information came from the sales and marketing department that were able to analyze the spending patterns of the hotel guests in the hotel. Very easy to do. It's just not very often done because nobody asks for it. And it took me about 2 days to get the information because they would input the data, it wouldn't come out right, I gave them a few more points, but after trial and error of a couple of days, we got the information. But use it wisely. What's going to have the most impact there? Is it going to be the financial figures? They look good, don't they? But look at those percentages. Wouldn't you rather tell the food and beverage manager that the spa guest spends 331% compared to the non-spa guest? So shouldn't the spa manager make sure people are getting, shouldn't the food and beverage manager make sure he's getting every guest into the spa? Because if he does, his revenue is going to increase. In fact, give him a business card with a 10% discount to come and use the spa and get him to promote and get your guests into the spa. It boosts his money. Why do you think that is? Why would that be? Well, one plausible reason is that if I've been to the spa and I've spent an hour or two in the dreamy world of the therapists that have made me totally relaxed and I'm oiled, I'm not going to particularly want to get dressed and go out of the hotel. I might take room service, or if I do get dressed, I might go down and eat in the restaurant. So some of the reasons are fairly simple to work out when you think about it. When you think about it and you get that information. And that's a survey I was fortunate enough to be able to do in a lot of hotels, including one in South Africa that I thought I'd put in there for you. And it's remarkably similar information. So I'm very confident that if you run this information in your hotel, you will find a pretty consistent marking. And if you look at that particular hotel there, you can see in South Africa, the F&B spend and total spend is significantly higher for a spa guest than it is for a non-spa guest. But this is all graphical information. And it's good, but you've got a point to prove and you need to know what you're doing with this information. So don't just present the figures. Think about how you're going to present them to accentuate your point. You know, I wanted to show to a hotel in Europe that it was really important that they actually took notice of their spa, because they weren't. They were ignoring it. It was in the basement. Who cared about the spa? So I ran some figures to them. And there, those graphs say, oh, you don't even have to look very hard. All you have to look at is the difference in the size of those figures. But when you do, you'll see that the spa guest spends almost 4 times more per stay than the non-spa guest in this hotel. Now, who's that going to please? Who's that's going to motivate? Hey, your sales manager. Woo, yee, I'm going to sell more because it's going to do more for my bonus. I'm going to get this generated because it increases the spend in the old hotel. And of course, your financial controller, they might just smile for once. So think about your presentation and think about how you're making it come across impactfully. So for South Africa, a little bit of note. I know not all of you are in South Africa, but Marissa is, and so I put this together. How much do they spend? Well, you know what? In this particular hotel, only 9% of the guests use the spa. Only 9%. But how much do you think they contributed in revenues to the hotel? I'll let you think about that for 30 seconds. No, 5 seconds. Here we go. 21%. That 9% of the guests produced 21% of the spend. Now, is that going to make your general manager take notice? Will it make your financial controller take notice? I'm sure it will. When they say, oh, the spa doesn't make any money, you can find ways of telling them, well, actually, it's a pretty important part of the business. And I'll leave this last little part, so some interesting information. Again, in South Africa, old data, but you can see that the average daily rate is higher amongst the spa guests. That means they take premium rooms and they're not likely to seek discounts so much. Food and beverage is higher. We said that already. And the total spend, look at that, is 3 times the amount of a non-spa user. So that does make the general manager happy, the financial controller happy, your sales guy motivated, your HR manager and you happy, and of course, your team happy. And that is really important. So point 2, to me, is to make sure that you know who your audience is, learn how to gather the relevant information, which is often contained in the marketing department of your hotel, and then present that information with impact and grabs attention. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go over to questions now.
So while you stop sharing, Andrew, I'd like to ask something that I think will appeal to quite a few of the people watching at the moment.
Yes.
Is what about spas that are not connected to hotels? So what guidance can you give them in terms of data collection? Because there's quite a few here that have standalone day spas.
So standalone day spas, I think there's 2 things that they can do easily. One is to find a system such as Sim Performance or any system that is giving them real live data. That's really important because once they've got that, they'll know whether they need to hire more staff, whether they need to do promotions, whether they need to let staff take a break. If they don't have that data, they're relying on intuition, guesswork, and that's not always accurate. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's not always accurate. So I think that's the first one. And I'll give you an idea. I think that Fahim's system starts from around about $20 a month. So we're not talking of a great deal of money. That's the most important thing. The second thing I think is to do your own kind of guest satisfaction survey. And there are only really, to me, there's only 2 questions. You don't need a complicated one. You don't even need a company to come in and do it. You can do it yourself. But there are only really two questions you ever need to ask on a guest satisfaction survey. And I know they go into great long things, but the 2 questions you need to ask are, would you come back? And would you recommend me to a friend? And if they say yes to both of those, you've done something right. So keep it simple. People don't like to fill out great lengthy questionnaires or surveys, but they do need to, you do need to get some kind of feedback from the guest. If they want to volunteer more, and some people like to talk, fine, let them talk away and make notes on it. But if they're in a hurry, would you come back? And would you recommend us to a friend? Those are two big things. And if you want to add in there, if you recommend us to a friend, you get a discount on your treatments. So that's what I would do for the standalone operations. It really is important to get that data. Competition analysis is something in your day spas and your salons. Is just saying, oh, well, how do we do competition analysis? You know, all these hotels, it's great. They can afford somebody or they hire Smith Travel. How do we do competition analysis? I think you've got to budget a certain amount of your income to take time to actually take treatments at your competitors. It's not enough to just go in there and get their price list, because that will, okay, give you an idea on where you're pricing yourself, but how good are they? And that is the only way to do that, is to go and actually experience it, either you as a manager or as a perk for your team to go and do that. But that's also very, very important. And that is data collection. It may not be computer data, but it is intellectual data that you are collecting. Does that help, Marissa?
Lot. I have another question.
Ah, okay.
Everybody, please feel free to go into the chat box, because I know lots of you don't like to mute. I mean, to unmute. Otherwise, unmute and ask away. Because we've got Andrew around, so let's make use and pick his brain. Andrew, this data collection thing. How often should spa owners and managers be analyzing their data? Number one. And how long does it take? Because I think that a lot of spa owners are afraid of analyzing data because they think, oh my word, it's going to be 2 hours of my day. Can you give some words of wisdom there?
So when we started that program at Accor, and we started to get on the number of properties, as I said, we had 300 properties, of which about 200 are participating in the program today. How on earth do you analyze all that data? Well, what you do is you ask your data analyst to put in triggers and alerts that notify you when things are outside of the norm. So for example, if therapist utilization drops below 30%, it will trigger an alarm and you can see it. Or if your retail is 10% under budget, whatever margins you want to set, they set alarms. So the way I initially did that, because we didn't have those alarms set in originally, but the way I initially did that was I had a couple of data analysts working for me, and they observed it. And very, very quickly, within a matter of a month or two, they were able to spot the anomalies in all of the figures for the 200 spas they were looking at. Now they're looking at 200 in one go. So if you are looking at one, if you are the boss of one spa or even 2 spas, you can look at this daily, and it will only take you 5 or 10 minutes to quickly find out where you need to see. And if you've got then a system that's built in that will actually highlight the areas that you want, you know, the alarms, then it's taking you 5 minutes to see it and make a decision. And that's why I wanted to also show you that all those figures that you see, the lovely Excel spreadsheets, just do your head in. You look at them and you start going balmy, especially if you look at them all day long. I don't know how accountants do it, but if you've got graphs and visuals, then it becomes very, very quick and easy to spot. And then you can dive in deeper once you spot something. So if you say, well, actually, that bar chart doesn't look as high as the other one, it doesn't look normal compared to all the other figures I've done, then you can dive in and you look at the figures and say, oh yes, that's the reason why. So a lot of the systems that you have should be able to convert figures into graphs. We only use 5 or 10% of the system's capabilities of most of the softwares that we get. So it's worthwhile you, if you've got an existing software, worthwhile you getting somebody to analyze it, look at the reports it can run. For example, Book for Time runs many reports that nobody ever uses because they don't even ask it, but they're all there. However, you have to bear in mind, if you're in a hotel, that all of that information from your operating system is giving you information about your guest. It's not giving you information about the hotel guests that don't use your facilities. That's why I say you go to the marketing department and say to them, hey, you've got reports on all of the guests. I'd like to know the difference in spending patterns between the spa users and the non-spa users. And that's how I would do that. It doesn't take very long, and you've got to start somewhere. Start small. If you're a day spa operator, yes, but you know, I'm running the show, I'm manning the desk, I'm trying to do the figures, I'm trying to do the staffing, and now you're asking me to do another thing. Well, that other thing is actually quite important. Even if you allocate 15 minutes of it with a system, you'll get used to it, you'll find it very helpful, and actually it'll reduce the amount of time you're spending on all the other aspects. Okay?
Amazing, amazing. Okay, does anybody else have a question for Andrew? Go for it. So while we're waiting, Andrew, as part of the Spa Professionals Guild course that we offer, the online course, we do have a spreadsheet that we've actually populated for our members. It's actually wonderful. So it looks a little bit similar to the first spreadsheet you had.
Yep.
That shows utilization, unsold hours in the day, average docket value, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All they really need to do, so it's been done for them. That's why I'm asking who is using that spreadsheet already, because it is an absolutely incredible tool, and I'm so happy to hear how you feel about it.
If the tool's an Excel base, you can create charts that automatically adjust to the input of the data, which is, once you know how to do it, it's great. It's very simple. It's just a proficiency in Excel, but it's really super. So if you just want to look at, let's say, therapist utilization, you just need to know how to formulate that in Excel, and then have a chart next to it, and the chart will adjust every time you input the figures.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so that's our next little evolution of that spreadsheet.
That's your next evolution, definitely. Definitely.
Yes, that sheet works like a bomb. It really does. It's okay. Does anybody have questions? Yes, Andrew, for you. I told you they were a little bit shy, but let's see. Maybe we'll.
Okay, that's okay. Well, just even if you don't have a question, was the information useful? Have I given you enough information that was saying, oh yeah, that makes sense, or what a waste of time this was?
I doubt that. But going to the chat box, everyone, like we always do when we're done, let Andrew know how you're feeling about his presentation, and perhaps also maybe just point out one interesting thing that you got out of today's session that perhaps you're going to start implementing, because that's the whole point, is to give you valuable, actionable tools to say, right, this is my next step. This is what I'm doing next. Okay, so Janelle has her plan. She's going to do a survey. Yeah. And remember, 2 questions. 2 questions. What are they, Janelle? Let us know. Don't tell her, Andrew. Don't tell her. Let's see if she remembers. Shazia saying amazing session. Survey needed. Divine. Okay.
One of the things that I always find, while Janelle, good one, that's one, Janelle, and the other one. One of the things that I always find somewhat strange is the reluctance to share information. And that I find strange because the hotels do it. The hotels do exchange information to Smith Travel Research. And probably because Smith Travel Research is an internationally tried, tested and trusted partner that keeps the information totally confidential. And then all the spas are worried that actually the information isn't confidential. But if we were to assume that the confidentiality could be overcome, I don't know why there's still a reluctance to submit the information. As you can see, I like to collect the data. It helps me with the analytics of being able to run a business. But I would also feel a lot better if I knew that my $50 spa massage was too cheap or too expensive in town.
Wow. That is pretty interesting. Okay, Samantha's saying that she's interested to see how much her spa adds to the hotel's F&B revenue and room revenue. Yes.
So Samantha, do you work in a hotel? I presume you do by the question. If you do, the questions you need to go to your marketing team is to say to your marketing team, I'd like to run some reports for the month of January, February, March. Let's do a 3-month trial to run some reports that show the difference in spending patterns between the guests that use the spa and don't use the spa. And we will analyze the length of stay, we'll analyze the food and beverage, we will analyze the average daily rate. And if we just do those 3 figures for 3 months like that, just to do a trial, you can see how that goes and whether it's worthwhile. But I think it will be quite an interesting experiment to do.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Okay, well, that's it. Does anybody have any other questions? Would anybody like to unmute, say anything? What I would like for all of us to do, please, is to show video so that I can take a screenshot of all your beautiful faces to post this as part of our little library of pictures. So is everybody able to show their gorgeous faces? Hello, Nicola.
Well, while they're doing that, I'm going to just finish on something slightly away from data, but something I think is really relevant for everybody that's running a spa today.
Okay.
And that is that we've all gone through various degrees of difficulties with COVID. And I'm always looking at what is the next kind of evolution in our industry. And I do believe that the next evolution in our industry is the greater sphere of wellness. It's permeating every country in the world, and it is a concept that people don't really know much about because it has a different kind of connotation depending on where you are and who you are. But generally, everybody says, yes, we need wellness. And COVID has actually accelerated that demand. So you can go to a site like the Global Wellness Institute and you can see what the latest trends are. But for me, I think the big factor trends for you, if you're a spa operator, irrespective of where you're operating, is to think, okay, how can we incorporate that into what we do? And you incorporate it into kind of 3 different areas. If you're in a hotel, 2 if you're in a standalone. The 3 in the hotel is you incorporate it into the guests, of course, is how do you bring in that? And I'll touch on that in a minute. The second thing then is you incorporate it into the team that you are working with. And thirdly, you incorporate it into the wider team for the whole of the hotel. And then if you're in a day spa, obviously you incorporate it into your guests and into your hotel, into your guests and into your staff. So simple things. And it's really important for you as spa directors to think about this. Simple things. First of all, there is a greater need to bond like crazy at the moment. People have been so starved to touch. They've been so starved of being together because of lockdowns and different scenarios that you are playing a vitally important role, not just in providing treatments, but in actually mentally helping people out and making them feel good. So anything you can do to enhance that in terms of the treatments you do, or in terms of the getting people together is really, really important. And then to take those services into the back of house, into your staff, and make sure you provide things on nutrition, on yoga, on time together, so that you actually make sure that there is a strong family identity and that they are actually thinking wellness in the way they eat, the way they move, and the way they rest. And I think that's vitally important. I'm going to touch a lot more on that in the next presentation, I hope, if I'm invited back. But thank you very much for coming in.
Yes, you are definitely invited back. But we won't tell them too much about that presentation because they must be kept eager beavers until then. Will everybody show their video, please, 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 so that we can get a nice little screenshot. It will be so amazing. Okay, I'm going to take it with whoever's showing right now. Okay, here we go. Smile, everybody. Divine. I've got it. I've got it. I've got it. Okay, Janelle's asking, is that a real view? Janelle, wait till you hear what view that is. Tell them, Andrew.
Yes, it is a real view. It's the view from my summer house in Sweden, and that's the fjord in the background. That picture was taken at around about 11:30 at night. It's a very, very nice, it's a completely sustainable house, dry toilets, no cars get into it, built in 1772 and is still a health retreat location today. But this is my little summer stuga.
Wow, agreed. Agreed, agreed. Yes, it is gorgeous. Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable it is. Your golden nuggets of information are always welcome.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks everybody for joining in. It's been very, very good to be able to talk to you, and I hope that I've been able to give you a couple of little nuggets of information that will help you with your work, your career, and your success.
You most definitely have. Thank you so much. So everyone, please just give us your checkout word. How are you feeling now after our session? Give us your goodbye word, and then we'll be done.
Okay. Thanks.